Thank you, everyone, for all the work that went into putting this. My name is Eesha Sharma. I'm an associate professor of marketing, and I study consumer behavior with a specialization in the psychology of money and consumer financial decision making. And something I've been really excited about recently is exploring the intersection between money, identity, self-worth, and meaning. So I'll be sharing some work with you today about your money and your mind, and why smart people can sometimes get stuck in their money relationships. So money's all around us, we use it every day, but we might still feel stuck in some way or another. And part of this is maybe related to financial knowledge, but it's really not about intelligence and financial literacy at the end of the day. A lot of it comes down to psychology. Money isn't simply counted, it's felt. So if I had to ask you, this is some audience participation, what's the first emotion that comes to mind when you think of money? What's that? Anxiety? I got some anxieties over there. Anything? Greed, okay. Security, power. All right, what about if money were a person, how would you describe your relationship with it?
Complicated.
Complicated? So usually when I ask these questions, the majority of people don't say joy, right? Most of them talk about things related to anxiety and complication. And it turns out that when we think about money, it's not just about what we have, it's how we feel about it. So two people with the same amount of money can feel very differently. Some people can feel secure. Some people might feel like they don't have enough. Even in the absence of no changes, your perception of how well off you're doing or how worse off you're doing can change. And this is what most of my research has been on, the different factors that influence how we feel about our money, whether we feel wealthier or poorer. But beyond just the level, there's also a lot more to unpack in terms of people's money relationships, which can be formed by various things like our childhood environments, our culture, what we've been exposed to. And I did some research. And if I ask people about the first word that comes to mind when they think about money, the number one category is anxiety, stress, and worry. We have some people in the minority who say things like positive emotions like security and confidence, but most of these words are negatively valenced. I similarly asked them about their relationship with money, and the number one category that comes up is ambivalent. So that doesn't mean you don't have strong feelings. It means equal and opposite feelings, so a love-hate type of relationship, or a conflicted, toxic relationship. One person said, money is like my abusive boyfriend, but at least he pays for dinner. And again, we have a smaller minority of people who say healthy, friendly, supportive, but most people tend to have this complicated relationship with money. And that can lead to a lot of behaviors that can lead people to feel stuck. They can spend too much, maybe be impulsive with their spending. They might spend too little and save too much. That's actually a thing, being very worried about how you save your money and where it's going. Feeling out of control, avoiding, freezing, shutting down, commingling your identity with what you have. So what I earn, my income, where I work, all of these external types of outcomes with your own inherent self-worth. And underlying these issues tends to be these negative emotions related to fear, anxiety, guilt, and shame. And so I've been exploring what I and some others called money wounds. And this is not an exhaustive list, but it's a list of common issues that people have with their money. So a scarcity wound, I don't have enough and I never will. So that's marked by a lot of feelings of anxiety. A control wound, where maybe things were uncertain growing up. There might be hypervigilance, overactively monitoring bank accounts. A self-worth wound, where again you feel that who I am as a person depends on the money I have, and that can lead to people spending to signal to themselves or others how well they're doing, or not spending at all because they don't believe they deserve it. You can also have an overwhelm wound where people freeze and they shut down, they don't know how to think about money or track their expenses, make decisions. Or a shame wound, feeling incompetent, even lying about your finances and your financial decisions because you feel so uncomfortable. So one question I've been really excited about is, can we do better? And I have been drawing on research in psychology, marketing, consumer financial decision making, and also clinical psychology to develop a framework around how we can get unstuck. So it involves 5 pieces. Reveal, that's about pattern recognition. Root, figuring out where these beliefs or emotions or patterns come from. Reframing, updating your beliefs. Rewiring, including small behavioral changes to sort of break yourself out of patterns. And then 5, reinforce, setting up systems around you that can help make these patterns stick. So starting with the first one, maybe that we can do some audience participation here. I don't know if you have your phone or you have a piece of paper or you just mentally think about it. Number 1, if you think about it, do you have any emotional, cognitive, or behavioral patterns that keep you feeling stuck? Maybe they're feelings around fear, or shame, or anxiety, or overwhelm. Maybe they're thoughts, I'll never have enough, I'm going to run out, I'm bad with money, I can't do this. Or behavior, like over-control, or impulsiveness, collapsing, or freezing. If you can think of maybe one of these that you might have, we can walk through these steps together. Root, understanding the pattern's origin. So oftentimes these originate, we're not born with these patterns. Maybe they were stories we were told when we grew up, things that we saw our parents doing with money or saying about money, being insecure or unstable with our financial situation, having to be responsible very early. The idea is to have a better sense of where these patterns originated from, because when we're aware of things, we can start to make modifications. So reframing, this is when we question recurring beliefs. And I'm not talking about blanket optimism here, not about positive psychology or anything woo-woo, but thinking about the different thoughts or feelings or patterns that come up. If it's, I can't do this, and you feel overwhelmed, acknowledging that fear is an emotion, it's data, it doesn't mean we need to stop. If you think you're bad with money, thinking about other skills that you do have to bolster self-efficacy, this one just might not be a skill you learned yet. Saving means depriving myself, reframing that in terms of future opportunities. And again, this isn't about blanket positivity, but introducing other thoughts into your minds, this cognitive flexibility that allows you to entertain other possibilities. Rewiring. So this is when you introduce small behavioral changes that can help you actually change your patterns. So if you're someone who tends to freeze or shut down when you think about money, training yourself to just open your bank account and observe. No judgment, no shame, just observing what's going on. To build things like competence, do a 10-minute task. If you have poor impulse control or you believe you find yourself buying things on TikTok or one-click purchases on Prime, a 24-hour delay rule. Put it in the cart, just wait 24 hours. All of these little changes can start to change patterns. And then finally, reinforcing. This is about creating lasting systemic change. So if you know certain behaviors are difficult for you, like putting aside certain amounts of money, automate it. It's far less painful when you're not seeing the money leaving your account. Associating yourself with people who do have good money habits. Doing simple weekly or monthly check-ins about your finances. These are things that you can set up in your environment around you, whether it's people, places, or systems that help these patterns stick. So that's this framework that I've been working with because I've spent most of my research looking at feelings of scarcity and issues that people have with money, and I got to a point where I said, okay, can we do better? So we know all of these struggles that people have with money. Where do they come from? How do we understand this better? And how can we help consumers, individuals, really get a better sense of their relationship with money and their money patterns? So key takeaways. Money is not just about numbers or counting figures, it's emotional. Smart people stay stuck, not just because they don't have information or they're not intelligent, but because money is deeply emotional and some of these patterns are learned. We pick them up from childhood. We are entrenched in certain cultural beliefs. You know, the different exchanges that we have at work. There are so many things around us, and it's not just money, but external accomplishments, what we own, where we live, the car we drive, the place that we work. And all of these can be commingled in our identities. But when we understand patterns, whether it's money or beyond, that's when we can start to implement change, if that's what we're looking for. And that's what I have for you today. Thank you very much.
Any questions, please?
It's got- You can always count on me. What is your, setting aside your role at the university and being a professor, what is your personal favorite nudge that you use to help manage your own relationship with money?
Yeah, so I have to admit to you that all of this research is like autobiographical research. I grew up in a household where money was not certain, and so I have a scarcity wound, and these wounds aren't mutually exclusive. I also freeze, and you'd be surprised how much those small behavioral experiments can get your nervous system used to doing something different. But as for what is really helpful for me, the automatic savings has been really helpful. I read a book called The Richest Man in Babylon when I was in college, and it said something like, put aside 10% of your paycheck. And for women, it's probably a little higher. We live longer, and sometimes paid less, not here. But so automating the savings, it really does make it less painful. And then I like checking my bank account balances and seeing positive momentum, because we know goal progress can help us move forward too.
I love this idea of emotions being at the center of finance. Susie Orman, comes to mind, right? But what I want to hear is I see a lot of the scarcity, even with the presentation. Is there something about abundance? I see some individuals who have balanced abundance. They don't have that much, they're less well off than others. Do you see them and their relationship with money? Quite good. Where is that coming from?
Yeah,
is it a flip side or?
So where does abundance mindset come from?
Is it scarcity and abundance are not a continuum? They're flip sides of a coin, or are they? How do you see it? Is what I want.
In my research, I've always looked at it as a continuum from constrained or feeling that resources are scarce to feeling that you have plenty or abundance. And you see a lot of abundance psychology movement these days, because they say get outside of the scarcity mindset. Some of them are positive affirmation, positive psychology types of things. But what I've seen is that people who tend to have both secure relationship styles and secure relationships with money tend to have grown up in environments where they observed that, and it's learned. There are personality traits that correlate with some of these things. Neuroticism, people tend to be worried in general, more so than others. But a lot of this is things that are learned over time. But that also tells us we can change.
One more observation is what I found intriguing is the idea of you said it and moved, is the first part that you said is acceptance. That this is, I am scared or I'm anxious or whatever, is acknowledging, but also accepting it without judgment. That's what I heard. Yeah,
so there's a lot of work in... Yeah, I know, and I thought that I was going to run out of time, so I was speaking fast. But in psychology, there's a great book that I love called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's about trauma, and many clinical psychologists will say that you need to feel the feelings to process them, otherwise they stay in your body. And so experiencing the feelings, otherwise they stay stuck. So acknowledging the feelings, it doesn't necessarily mean they'll go away. Maybe you'll live with them forever, but it helps process, and that's where the little behavioral change experiments come in to try to rewire the mind. Yeah. Well, thank you. This is the first academic talk that I've given that wasn't based on one research paper, so thank you for being kind.